Hey everyone, before we dive in, I wanted to share something exciting. You can now send us a text message directly from your favorite audio platform. Yes. So whether you've got a question, want to give us feedback, or just want to share your thoughts on the show, I'd love to hear from you. Look in the show notes at the very start and you will see the phrase send us a text. Click that link, send us your message, and that's it. We can't wait to read them. Now, let's jump in with this episode.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, usually for injuries with pitchers. So understanding how to monitor stress, how to monitor workloads of guys,
Right.
having the trust and relationship to have conversations with guys who maybe feel like they need to pitch this day to make the team
Mhm.
or something, when realistically.
He's a former pitcher at Eastern Connecticut State University and the current interim head baseball coach at Pomona-Pitzer Colleges in California. Jason Staub is up next. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports, talking with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that makes the sports world great. A quick reminder, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, make a note, subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. You can find out all of the info at 5thquarterpodcast.com. Now, grab your iced tea or your coffee, get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. Now, let's talk about today's guest. He's a former baseball player from Eastern Connecticut State University, the current director of strength and conditioning and pitching coach at PFA Baseball, and the current interim head baseball coach and pitching coach at Pomona-Pitzer Colleges in Claremont, California. I couldn't be more excited to welcome to the show Jason Staub.
Thanks for having me, Sandy. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited as well. You're like my second baseball player. So I'm ready to dive into your story. Everybody's story is a little different, and I just find that very interesting and inspiring and all that kind of stuff. I always like to start off with how we know each other, and we actually are just meeting. We have
Right.
a mutual connection in common. Coach Darren Jones from CT Mayhem and East Windsor High School up in Connecticut. He is a client of mine and he referred you to me, and I thank him very much for that. So I want to give him a shout out for that for sure. So it's kind of been baseball month. As I said, you're my second baseball player this month. So I'm excited about that. So now let's dive into where you're working right now. As your shirt says, Pomona-Pitzer, and that's really kind of a tongue twister, and I'm sure I'm going to mess it up at some point. But you guys just finished, I was reading some stats on there. You just finished an incredible 2024 season. You had your first conference championship. Is that the entire school, like the entire school history, your first conference
In
championship?
baseball history.
In baseball.
Yep.
You had a regional championship, a super regional championship, and you got to go to the College World Series appearance. Was your I know D1 is in Omaha, is D3 also in Omaha?
D3 kind of hops around. So we were actually in Ohio this year, right outside of
Oh,
Cleveland.
okay, okay. But still, very exciting. So tell me a little bit about what you do, because I noticed you're the interim head coach. The previous head coach took a leave of absence.
Yeah, so our school grants the head coaches sabbaticals every for a semester every 3 years, or for an
Right.
entire year every 7 years.
Okay.
So during his sabbatical, he's away at various MLB facilities or Power Five NCAA schools, learning from them and trying to get a few more ideas to help our program at Pomona-Pitzer get a little bit better.
Well, that's really, I don't think I know of any other schools that kind of do that. And I think that's really encouraging because it's putting back into the organization, but also allowing him to go out and kind of do a little bit of other things and giving you an opportunity to step up as head coach.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a great experience because I've been able to step into his role for the fall, which we're coming off a really good season. So it's a good time to be with all the guys out there when we practice, doing stuff recruiting wise, making sure things aren't falling apart while he's gone. And Mostly my job stays pretty much the same.
Right. Do you have a lot of players that are coming back for another year, or are you rebuilding?
We do have a lot that are coming back. I
Okay.
believe we graduated 6 or 7 players last year.
Okay.
This year we're going to graduate 11 or 12. So,
Wow.
so that's a big class. But we also brought in around 9 or 10 guys this year as well. So we still haven't quite made full roster decisions yet, but it's a pretty similar lineup and pitching staff to what we had last year.
Okay. What are some of your goals? Obviously, you probably want to repeat the success from last year, but what are like your top three goals for this season?
So top three goals, obviously we want to get back to the World Series. I think number one is go and actually win the thing this time. That'd be really cool to bring that trophy back to this school, which has had successful baseball teams in the past and looking to build upon the success that we've had and sustain that for the future classes. Winning the conference outright, so winning the most games in conference and being the top
Right.
seed when we get to the conference tournament is always a goal. And just making sure, for me personally, having everyone improve and get better in whatever way that is for each individual.
So tell us just a little bit, because I'll be honest, I've never heard of Pomona-Pitzer, and it's actually two schools. So if you could just tell the listeners out there a little bit about the school and also about the conference that you guys are in.
Yeah, so we're a Division 3 school in Southern California, about 35 miles outside of downtown LA. It's part of the Claremont Consortium. So there are 5 campuses. Each school has a different enrollment process.
Right.
Pomona College and Pitzer College are two separate institutions that combine to create one athletics program.
Okay.
So when we're recruiting, we recruit students for Pomona College and we recruit students for Pitzer College.
So that brings up a question. Are you recruiting a certain quota for each school?
Ideally, yes. So we're usually Pomona has a few more students than Pitzer, so it allows us to bring in a few more students. So we're usually bringing in around 6 or 7 Pomona students every year and 3 to 5 Pitzer students every year. Pomona is pretty close to one of the top education liberal arts schools in the
Right.
country. It's almost as hard to get into as a Harvard, about an
Wow.
8% acceptance rate. Pitzer is a little below that, but still one of the top liberal arts schools in the country, top 30 liberal arts school.
Does it make your recruiting process more difficult, though, that you have to recruit a certain quota for each school?
Yes and no, because when we're recruiting, it helps us narrow out or it helps us focus in on who we're looking at. The GPAs do a lot for us when we see those at
Yeah.
recruiting events.
Yeah.
So when we're out at events, we're looking for a 3.6, 3.7 plus.
Okay.
So it's for us, if we're at a big showcase, it's easy to narrow down to those individuals, and then we try to create a pretty good list. We have 4 coaches on staff. All 4 of us are out recruiting throughout the summer, spring, winter. So we have a pretty nationwide reach that we try to bring into our program.
A little side note here. Have you had any prospects in the Memphis area?
Not Memphis. We have two Nashville guys on our team though.
Nashville. We don't like Nashville here. We don't like Ole Miss or Mississippi State either. But that is an interesting scenario. I'd not really heard about that and all the things that come into that. So let's actually go back and dive into that your baseball journey itself. When did you start playing baseball? Do you remember the age?
I believe I was 7 or 8 years old, so that would have been when I started t-ball. A little later than other sports. I played soccer up from 5 years old until I was 13 or 14. I played basketball when I was around 6, all the way till I was probably in 8th grade.
Right.
And then baseball was always kind of my third favorite sport for a while. And my brother, he's actually about 2 years younger than me. His favorite sport was baseball. And I'm a competitive individual. We had practice and play wiffle ball a lot in the yard. So that would that kind of lit my passion for it, and I started watching more games. I grew up in Connecticut, so
Right.
I was a Boston Red Sox fan, and
Yeah.
I got to live through some successful seasons there. And I just kind of fell in love with the game. It became my top priority, pretty much from 10 years old all the way through college and still today.
Okay. Okay. Um, did you ever have a moment where you wished you had played a different sport? All right, before we get into the next topic, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about something that can really help you level up your personal brand. I've created an exclusive new book called The Visionary Personal Brand Playbook. It's perfect for those of you who have big goals but aren't exactly sure how to make your brand stand out, or for that matter, where to even start. It's packed with actionable tips that you can start using right now, today. If you're interested, head over to my website at sandy-adams.com/playbook and grab your copy. Now back to the show.
I played all the sports that were available to me in my town. So I grew up in a small town in Portland, Connecticut.
Mm,
There's about 5,000 people in that town. So they pretty much offered soccer, basketball,
yeah.
baseball, and not much else. I also ran cross country a little bit in high school and
Okay.
middle school.
Okay. Okay. Um, so yeah, I mean, I grew up in a small town in Tennessee. We had about the same 5,000 people. So I totally get that. Totally understand that the limitations on that. Let's talk about you get into high school, and did you guys have a junior varsity, or was it just varsity baseball?
We had a junior varsity team and a varsity team, but our varsity team probably had around 12 to 15 guys on it.
Mm.
And our JV team had to pull a lot of the varsity guys down just
Oh,
because we probably only had 25, maybe 30 baseball players in the entire school.
wow. Okay. What was the main sport for kids in your town? Was it soccer?
Soccer, yeah.
Soccer, yeah.
Our women's soccer program in high school is really, really good. They went to the state championship 3 years in a row.
Do you know any that went?
I I grew up with all of them, so I have a pretty good idea of most of
I
them. Yeah.
might be reaching out to you to get an interview for a women's soccer player.
All
Um,
right.
so let's talk about high school. I read in my research, and what you sent me was that you guys won in your senior year, you won the CIAC state championship. Um,
Yes.
so let's talk about your recruitment. Were you being recruited by colleges when you got in high school? At what grade level though were you being recruited?
Yeah, so I was a small kid. I was
Mhm.
probably 5'2", a buck 30 when I entered high school.
Okay,
Um, so I went through a little bit of a growth spurt. I'm not very tall now. I'm still only 5'11", but I got there when I was probably a junior in high school.
right.
So I threw pretty hard when I was younger. I was we had a small high school baseball team, so I was fortunate to make the varsity team as a freshman.
Right.
We were not very good. We went 2-18, and
Wow.
but I got experience in varsity, so that was pretty cool. And probably three or four other guys from my grade, the freshman grade, were able to play on the varsity team,
Mhm.
so it created a good foundation for the future. We pretty much all played together from the age of t-ball all the way through high school. We didn't have a lot of club ball or travel
Right.
ball before high school, so we had a pretty good bond there. But I would say I started getting some attention from college coaches after my junior year of high school. That's when I
Mhm.
started going to some showcases, and I showed out decently well, so I got some attention from that.
So you're a pitcher. At any time, had you thought about doing a different position?
Honestly, no. I remember the first time they put us in coach pitch, little league. They had me next to the coach pitching, and
Right.
I just thought it was cool being kind of in the center of the field. And as a pitcher, the game starts and stops with you.
Hmm.
So I enjoyed that aspect of it, the control you have of where you can take the game.
Right.
And for some reason the pressure there didn't bother me nearly as much as the pressure hitting.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
interesting. The last guy that I interviewed, he was also a pitcher, or he was also a pitcher. My question to him, and I'm going to ask you the same thing, is that, baseball is a team sport, but yet the pitcher is really in the center of all the action. So the spotlight is a little bit more on you just because you're the one doing all the movement at every part of the game. Okay.
Right.
So how did you handle that pressure in the spotlight, not only in high school, but eventually in college?
I would say high school, I really enjoyed it.
Right.
Just because I started as a freshman on the mound and I was not very good. We were a
Right.
2-18 team, but um, as I got experience, as our class got some experience, we started to improve and get better. And I thought it was really cool that I could make a really positive contribution to the team that way. And I enjoyed kind of the attention and maybe taking it off, like some of the pressure off of other guys on the team
Right.
during those moments. Once I got to college, I'd say that drive to be competitive and to beat the hitter was still there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe I lacked a little bit of confidence after I had an arm injury. So after
Right.
that injury, I lacked a little bit of confidence. So some days you have a bad outing and you wish you could crawl into a hole, but on the pitcher's mound, you can't really do that. And you just kind of have
Right.
to work through it and help your team win the best you can.
It's interesting. I lived in Houston for 16 years. Don't hold that against me because I am an Astros fan now. But I'll be honest, and I've said this before, I never really liked baseball until the 2017 World Series. And I started understanding it was like game 5, and I started like Houston had flooded and I was paying attention to the game. There wasn't anything else to do. And I really started paying attention to the strategy. And I'd never had the patience to look at that before. To me, it was really a slow game. And I liked basketball because it's much more fast paced. The thing about what I saw, Justin Verlander got transferred to Houston from Detroit.
Yeah.
And then like I think a year and a half ago, he had Tommy John surgery. I think that's what he had. Just the ability for him to come back at the level or even a little bit better than he was before has to take an incredible amount of work ethic, but also you talk about the self-confidence and how you have to have that somehow instilled in you. How did you find the self-confidence to get back on that mound after your injury?
Yeah, and it was a challenge because everyone, regardless of what the injury is, whether
Mhm.
it's elbow, I had a torn labrum in my right shoulder. Um, you're learning how to rethrow a baseball, which is something that Justin Verlander had done for
Right,
38 years leading up to his elbow surgery.
right,
So he has to completely relearn how to throw a baseball. Your body, and same thing for me, but your body's different after the surgery. With the labrum, they go in and they tighten up the tissues here, so it feels really stiff. It
yeah,
doesn't quite feel like your arm or the arm that you remember before the injury. So that there's a learning process there. There's a trust factor that you have to have that there are going to be good days and bad days, but some of those bad days feel painful or they don't feel
right,
good. And you have to trust that it's not a re-injury. And
right.
because once you start doing that, then you start stressing yourself out and going down a rabbit hole, and the panic starts to seep in. Then you really have some issues. Um, but it's much easier said than done.
Sure, sure.
It just comes to trust having a really good plan, having
Hmm.
really good people around you that can help you execute that plan and make adjustments to it. When me as a college student, I didn't know what I needed. So
Right.
I could go to doctors, my athletic trainers, the pitching coaches I had in college, and see what they thought, what they think I needed to do. And they were pretty supportive of me throughout the entire process.
So, what was your go-to on those days where it got really bad or you you started going down that rabbit hole? Like, what was one of the techniques that you used to kind of rein yourself back in?
I think to kind of rein yourself back in, you almost have to take a step away. So you have to almost have an out of body experience where you're kind of looking down at yourself and
Mm,
say, this is just one day. This day is gonna pass. We're gonna move beyond it. Tomorrow's gonna be a brand new day, and we just gotta attack it the same way we would attack anything else.
right,
And if you can continue to string decent good days or decent days back to
right,
back to back, you're on the right track. If you let a small setback or anything kind of hold you back and you start to dwell on that, you're gonna get stuck and you're just not gonna trust the process. And that's just gonna hold you back, and it's gonna probably set you back even greater in the future.
right. I I use a quote I started using a couple of months ago that I think fits really nicely in that, and it's today does not define you. I think a lot of people, and I coach a lot of people with mindset and motivation and self confidence building. Um, and I think that no matter what you do, I think people struggle with that, with where they are right now. And I have started trying to build that out about today, this moment does not define you. If you can just focus on what you can do next to push yourself forward a little bit, then just focus on that and know that today is not the end of it. Today is not the rest of your life kind of thing. Um, as a high school student, did you have any injuries?
No, I was pretty healthy in high school. Maybe from cross country, I had some shin splints, but
Yeah.
that was it.
Were you forced to run cross country as because of baseball?
I, for some reason, that's the sport I was probably meant to do.
Okay.
I when I was younger, I didn't really have to train, and I could go out and run a 5 minute mile.
Oh my God.
Um, so if I put anywhere near as much work into that as I did baseball, I probably would
Right.
have had a more successful career there. But baseball was always something that I was more passionate about. I
Right.
think I liked that I wasn't necessarily the best, and that I could chase that, and I really enjoyed the process of working hard at baseball, and
Right.
so that helped me get through maybe not being the best player on the field, or understand that work's going to pay off in the at the end.
Do you think that year where you guys went what 2-18 or 2-16? Do you think that
18.
that year also provided more value to you?
I think so. For me, I didn't have a lot of pressure because I was a
Right.
freshman. So even if I didn't pitch well or didn't play well, it was not the end of the world for me, because I was like, well, I shouldn't be in this situation
Right.
at like any other school. I wouldn't be in this situation. But right now, I'm getting experience that those guys aren't getting right now, and I can use this in the future to be better for next year, and then to grow from next year to the year after and the year after.
I look at I have some great nephews who are playing baseball and basketball. And one of them actually he had basketball tryouts yesterday and I don't think they went very well. And he's 14 years old. And his mom said he just came home, went and talked to her and went in his room and stuff. And I look at a lot of these kids and it goes back to that, when I was little, you got an award for winning first place. You didn't get a participation award. And I also look at a lot of these kids these days, I think feel the need to be perfect, or they've had really great experiences and then when they have a bad experience, they don't know how to handle that.
Right.
And, I think having failure built in or having an off season or having something that doesn't go your way younger, I think, in my opinion, I think that that helps kind of create a better, well rounded person and gives you, I would think, the tools for later when you get at a higher level to compete.
Definitely. I know when I was really young, like probably Little League, I did not handle failure very well. Um, but that's something that my dad was there for me, and he would call me out when I was acting like a baby, and
Yeah.
he helped me kind of push through that. And I think having some failures when I was younger and never being the best on the baseball field was
Right.
something that always pushed me to be better. And like I said, that I just had a decent work ethic with it, and it helped
Mhm.
me get to college and play baseball there.
So when did I've forgotten the name of your college, Eastern Connecticut?
Yes.
Okay, thank God. um when did they start recruiting you and why did you decide to go there?
So they started recruiting me around August or July, right before my senior year of high school. And I was really late. I kind of kept pushing them off with my decision because I had dreams of going to a Division 1 school, and I
Mhm.
had I had some Division 1 visits, a couple non-scholarship offers. I had some Division 2 scholarship offers, but the money just didn't make sense for
Right,
my family. And then so since I didn't have a D1 scholarship, I know there's not that job security. So they
right,
could cut you when you get there. And I understood that D1 or bus is not always the right mentality. It's always cool to have that jersey or that logo on.
right,
But if you can play all 4 years at a Division 3 school and make the most of your athletic career, when I mean, chances you get to college from high school are around 7%.
right,
And then chances you get to pro baseball is probably 0.5%
right,
from the college guys. So it's such a long shot, and you gotta enjoy the 4 years that you're given to play. And Eastern Connecticut was a team that is one of the most successful Division 3 programs in the nation. They Before I got there, they won 4 national championships.
wow.
2 years after I graduated, they won their fifth national championship. So it was a team that I saw could give me the opportunity to win a national championship.
Sure.
And before my senior year of high school baseball, I never really won anything big like that. So I thought that would be really cool to have that opportunity.
Hmm.
And even after winning a state championship in high school, you're hungry for more. You want
Sure.
that next level, that next rush.
Sure you are. What was it like? How far away from your hometown was it?
It was about 45 minutes away.
Oh, that's nothing. That's like in your
Yeah.
backyard. What was that first semester like on campus? Was it such a culture shock to be away from home and on your own?
I don't remember it being that much of a culture shock. I thought it was pretty cool. Just because so you have more free time than high school. So in
Yes.
college, you're only taking 2 or 3 classes a day compared to 6 straight hours of it in high school. So that to me that means there's a lot more time for baseball. So I get to practice baseball all day, or I get
Sure.
to go in the weight room a lot during the day. And my goals at the time were I wanted to be a professional baseball player, but I knew I needed to work really hard to do that. And I thought it was awesome that I had all this new free time and young guys who were passionate about the game too and wanted to be at the field all the time. So I was excited for all of that.
When did you miss any classes when you were a freshman?
For skipping them,
Yeah,
or
did you skip any?
I don't think so. No, I had a pretty good academic transcript in college. I went to a small enough school where attendance counted, so they would take some points out of your grades if you didn't show up and participate.
Well, that's good because I was one of those that I freshman year, first semester, I 8 o'clock class, stupid me, skip class, couldn't get up. But you get that freedom. You're not in the structure of your parents' home. And sometimes even the people that have, been raised with really good structure, they don't necessarily know how to balance themselves when they get that extra freedom. So it's good to see that you had that work ethic built in.
I'm a creature of habit, so if my daily routine is class, then homework,
Right.
baseball, weightlifting, I'm gonna do that every single day. And once I get out of that plan, I kind of start to lose my mind a little bit. So I need to have a routine that I try to follow every single day.
Okay, so now we're going through your 4 years in college. You're playing, you were pitching. How do you feel looking back? How do you rate your performance in college?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give myself maybe a 3 at best.
Wow.
I just so I got hurt in the surgery before I played a college game.
Okay.
Um, in the fall, I I pitched really well as a freshman in the fall. We had one day to compete against another team. I remember throwing three scoreless innings against them, and they were another top 25 team in the country.
Right.
So I was told I was on track to win one of the starting jobs as a
Sure.
pitcher. And so I shut down because my arm was a little sore after the fall and the summer. And then when I started throwing again, anytime I got to above 70% intensity, I got a real sharp pain in my shoulder that would travel all the way down to my fingers. It would go numb.
Wow.
So apparently what the labrum does, it acts as like a sheath around your humerus, the bone in your arm.
Hmm.
And when it tears, it kind of does this. So the bone in your arm starts
Okay.
to kind of it kept hitting a nerve, which is what would cause that
Oh,
numbness and tingling.
right. I have a bone spur, so I definitely understand on my spine, and it hits my sciatic nerve. So
Yeah.
I definitely understand that. Um, so you have surgery and you come back and you struggle with
I
the
I actually
rehab.
came back and had my best year after my
Oh, okay. Okay. So overall, why would you give yourself a 3 out of 10?
because my best year was still not to my standards of what I thought it should be. I think I didn't quite get to that starting job that I wanted consistently. I bounced between the bullpen. When I came back, I was a starting pitcher
Hmm.
and I had some rough outings. They moved me to the bullpen. I was pretty successful out of there. We ended up winning the conference championship that year. Um, but after that, I just kept feeling some type of bicep tendonitis or something the following years, and my performance got worse. My velocity went down every
Yeah.
year, so I just got further and further away from where I wanted to be.
So when you moved towards being a senior, what were your plans then for had you start thinking about, okay, the pro career is probably not in my future.
Yeah, I want to say after my redshirt sophomore year, so my second year of baseball, I realized pro ball was not in the cards for me, and I was a 20-year-old kid, and my body was falling apart.
Yeah.
And there are 40-year-olds in the big leagues who stay healthy.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it?
So I was like, this is definitely not my calling. And so it took me probably a year and a half to have any idea of what I want to do. I really enjoyed my exercise physiology courses.
Hmm.
Um, I had a really good professor in undergrad who taught it in a unique way, but he made the information stick, and it was a
Right.
really engaging class. So I knew I wanted to do something in the sports field.
Right.
By the end of my college baseball career, I was kind of over baseball because of how much pain my body was in all the time.
Sure. Sure.
So I wanted to take a step away from that. And I thought another way to be a part of sports and stay active, because I can't sit at a desk
Hmm.
job all day. I wanted to do strength and conditioning because that's something I enjoyed. I enjoyed the process of getting better
Hmm.
in the weight room. And I thought if I have some more knowledge on this, I can help other athletes reach their goals in the
Right.
future, which is to me, I know how hard I worked, and I didn't necessarily always have the greatest plan. I would follow a bunch of different things and kind of hop back and forth, and no one really guided me where to go. And if I could be that guiding uh, arrow for them and kind of push them in the right direction to get better and reach their peak performance, that was my goal. So I after my first senior year, I had two. After my first senior year, I sent out a bunch of emails to local strength and conditioning coaches and colleges in Connecticut.
Hmm.
And the first coach who reached back out to me was Brajesh Patel at Quinnipiac University. He is their uh, men and women's ice hockey and basketball strength and conditioning
Okay.
coach.
Okay.
So I got an interview with him. He pretty much asked me if I was interested in doing strength and conditioning for a career. And I said, at the time, I said yes. And it's probably the best decision I ever made. Cold call, emailing someone and getting that response and taking that first offer it was the best.
So you went and worked under him?
I did. So I got to work. He threw me right into the fire. I got maybe 1 or 2 days to acclimate and kind of see how he runs things. And day three, he's like, "You're running the warm up today."
Well, good for him. I mean,
Yeah.
he must have seen something too, or just was like, "Hey, I'm just going to throw him in the fire and see what happens."
I think he's just a really smart guy who knows what people need to be pushed in the right direction.
Right. Right.
And I think what he does a really good job of is understanding people and knowing how to build relationships with people. And that's probably the biggest takeaway I got from the entire internship experience. And yeah, he threw me into the fire and he pretty much told the men's hockey team, hey, like he's new, don't hold back. Like, like if he messes up here, let him know.
Right.
And so that really taught me how to have attention to details
Yeah.
because when he would warm up his athletes, he'd tell them what side to do and how many breaths to hold or something like that. And he was very specific with everything, and they were used to that specific routine.
Right.
And maybe from the day or two of me watching and kind of shadowing, I didn't quite pick that up. But as soon as he was like, you got to know, you got to tell them how many breaths they need to take here or what side they're on. And that made me really open up my mind and pay attention to everything
Right.
that was going on there on out.
And it's also a lesson you probably really remembered too. It's
Yeah,
because I think that we remember more when we mess up and it's called out than versus we just keep doing the same thing and people don't say anything and they just kind of let you do that. Speaking about the relationships, I would think as a strength and conditioning coach, you need to build up that relationship so that they trust you and they want to follow your plan of action.
absolutely. In grad school, I went to a presentation at Holy Cross where their head strength and conditioning coach, Coach Oliver, said athletes don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's a good one. I've heard that.
And that's stuck with me for forever. So it comes down to I may know everything in the world about strength and conditioning, but if I don't have that relationship, that trust built, they're never going to listen to me.
Right.
And I'd have a better chance of them listening to me if I know nothing about strength and conditioning, but had a really good relationship and trust built up with them.
Sure. So you mentioned going to grad school. When did you decide to go to grad school?
So after my internship at Quinnipiac, that was going into the fall of my second senior year. I intern he pushed me to
Okay,
intern
I have a question. Why do you say second senior year?
my redshirt year, my
Oh,
redshirt
okay,
senior
okay, gotcha,
year.
gotcha. Okay,
'Cause I always called it my first and second senior year,
we
but
call it a fifth year senior, is what we call it down here.
I always joke around. But yeah, so after Quinnipiac in the summer, he pushed me to go to UConn in the fall. So
Mm,
I did strength and conditioning internship with UConn, their athletic performance team, and worked with all the Olympic sports there. In the spring, I was playing at Eastern Connecticut. I
mhm.
got to run the strength and conditioning sessions as a player at Eastern Connecticut.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It was very cool. It was good to keep that experience. And at UConn, they told me you got to go to Springfield College for your strength and conditioning masters. It's the best.
Interesting.
It's the best place to go. You need to go there. Do whatever you can to get in. So I applied to Springfield College. I believe I was one of 8 people in the
Hmm.
grad program for my class. Right after I graduated in 2019 from Eastern, I
Right.
started in the fall of 2019 at Springfield. And one of the good things about that program is they require you to do 3 internships as well in your 2 years.
Wow.
So one of the internships, you're at Springfield.
Hmm.
The GAs are all kind of in charge of you, but they give you a lot of freedom to coach the athletes, to be very hands-on with them.
Hmm.
Um, COVID happened in the spring of
Yeah.
2020. So I was supposed to go to Elon University in North Carolina.
I actually know that school because I had a previous guest who she ran track for Elon.
Awesome.
I had never heard of Elon until I had her on the show.
It's a small school, but it's in a
It
great
is.
spot.
It is.
And so I was unable to do that. I did a virtual internship with them. So
Okay.
we'd meet on Zoom calls. And then after my second year at Springfield College, I uh, had an internship at Texas Christian University
Mm,
in Fort Worth.
yeah.
And that was always my dream internship. I always wanted to work there. So
Really,
that was
really.
really cool.
It's a good school. It's a very good school. So you finish up the internships, you get your master's degree. What are you going to do now? Did you have a plan?
At the time, so I'll backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
When I was doing my grad school at Springfield College, I started to miss baseball. I started getting the urge to get back into the game a little bit.
Yeah.
So I reached out to my old travel team in Connecticut. Darren Jones, our mutual connection, he hired me. So he
Wait a
gave me
minute.
my
Wait. Did you play for CT Mayhem?
I so it was, he coached an older organization,
Okay. Okay.
Team Connecticut baseball.
Okay.
So
Got it.
um he hired me as my first coaching job. I was coaching 11 and 12-year olds
Okay.
and helping as his assistant there. Um, at the same time, I also reached out to my old high school coach and was able to hop on as the pitching coach for the varsity team.
Right.
And that was right before heading out to TCU. So
Okay.
I arrive in Texas. I have no idea what my plans are after I'm done with my couple months down there for the summer. So I'm just sending out probably 12 to 15 job applications a day during my lunch break, just on Indeed, on all the coaching websites,
Right.
and applying to baseball coaching jobs in college, applying to strength and conditioning jobs for college. And I just thought something's going to hit eventually. And
Right.
I saw this small school in California, Pomona-Pitzer. Just they were hiring a pitching coach. I was like, that'd be cool if I get that. Sent my application out. 5 minutes later, my head coach responded. Turns out he's also from Connecticut and went to Springfield College for his master's degree.
See, I got to tell you, there those little things, I don't think people put enough value on, you know, making those connections because he's probably even if he had 50 applications, the ones that you somehow have a connection with, you're probably going to lean towards a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's what I realized. I had no idea he was from Connecticut or went to Springfield until I looked his bio up as soon as he texted me back. But
See, should have done that first.
but he's like, you want to hop on a call tonight? And so we had a good conversation and continued the interview process. I was unsure about moving to California at the time, just because Texas was the furthest I've been away from home.
Do you know how many people would have been like, oh my God, to live in California from New England?
But I was thinking the same thing about Texas. I was like, if I could live in Fort Worth my whole life, I would. So I finished my intern. I drove down to Texas for my internship. I had to drive back.
My God.
I had about a week in Connecticut.
Right.
Flew to a wedding in Washington State and flew down from Washington State to California and started my job in August of 2021.
Well, you basically made a round trip around the entire United States. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously. So, what was that culture shock like moving to California, south of LA?
So I don't know if California itself was the culture shock. I think maybe the campuses
Okay.
of where I work are, because they are such a high level academic liberal arts
Right.
institution. And I went to a state school. So
Okay.
it was not quite the same level of education.
Mm,
The people I coach right now are going to be lawyers, doctors,
yeah.
engineers, Wall Street workers. People are going to make a lot of money out of this. So the guys I went to school at Eastern Connecticut were going to be physical education teachers, sports
Right.
psychologists, exercise science professors or researchers, stuff like that.
So that begs a good question though, because you know, I would they come to college, they're using baseball to get the education.
Yes.
So how do you keep them motivated in their performance when their end goal is not to play pro ball?
And that's a really good question. I think a lot of it has to do with the relationships you build with the athletes here. But at the same time, there's always that small part of you that wants to play pro ball. So
Yeah.
when we're recruiting guys, we're obviously looking at the high academic students, the guys with good transcripts, good extracurricular activities on their resume. But we're also looking for guys who love baseball.
Right.
And if I have two guys with the exact same transcript who are good at baseball, the same level player, and one I can tell loves it, and one is maybe 1 foot in, 1 foot out on it, I'm going to go with the
Mhm.
guy who loves the game because I know he'll put work in there.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So you do you feel like your transition, because the fifth quarter is basically once you retire from competitive competition. So do you feel like you struggled going into your fifth quarter?
No, just because I still get to be around sports every day.
Right.
From a strength and conditioning standpoint, I most what I miss the most about playing college sports is the team
Right.
and just being around those guys every day. And as a strength and conditioning coach, you get to be around those guys every day or the women every day.
Right.
And you a lot of times you have more interaction with them than the head coach does.
Yeah.
And then I'm very fortunate where I at Pomona-Pitzer, I get to be the pitching coach and the strength and conditioning coach for baseball.
Basically, you're like the entire team staff.
Not necessarily, but I try to wear as many hats as I can here, but I might as well use my education to and put it to good
Oh,
use.
sure. Sure.
But I get to have interactions with guys 4 or 5 days a week because I'm on
Mhm.
campus when we don't have practice because we're in the weight room. And then for me, my first year, that really helped with my transition and learning how to meet the certain guys on the team that I was learning 40 new players when I
Right.
moved over here. So having those interactions with them in the weight room every single day made my transition on the baseball side of things much easier because
Interesting.
I
Right.
knew how they like to be coached. I knew what their personalities were. I knew guys who needed that pushing, guys who maybe needed a little more um, of a confidence build up, something like that.
Um, so let's look at how did how did your high school career and your college career, the the things that you went through, the struggles and the injuries, how much did that play into how you take an outlook on your coaching now?
So that's a great question, and it's probably one of the biggest things that contributes to how I coach now, or
Mhm.
impacts how I coach now. Like I said before, they don't care how much you know until they know how
Right.
much you care. That's probably number one for me. But number two is the best availability, or the best ability is availability.
Sure.
So as a strength conditioning coach, everyone thinks you're trying to get them stronger, faster, and yes, you are,
Mhm.
but they need to be healthy. That's number one.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I have that education on the strength and conditioning side. I get to use that on the pitching coach side of things. I
Right.
know pitching is such a volatile action on the body,
Mhm.
and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, usually for injuries with pitchers. So understanding how to monitor stress, how to monitor workloads of guys,
Right.
having the trust and relationship to have conversations with guys who maybe feel like they need to pitch this day to make the team
Mm.
or something, when realistically I want you healthy.
Right.
I don't want you to pitch through an injury in October when I need you to pitch for us ideally in June in the World Series.
Right.
So I prioritize health, making sure our guys understand that that's what I'm focused on,
Mhm.
because I could be the best. I can know as much about pitching in the world, but if all my top guys are hurt, we're in
Yeah.
trouble.
That's true. That's true. Going back to high school, was there anything that you feel looking back now and knowing what you know about everything? Is there anything that you think would have made you a better ball player earlier or would have helped contribute to more success as a high school student going into college?
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple things. Number one is try to understand who you are and be you.
Mm, right,
When I was younger, I would always look at Major League Baseball players and try to emulate them and
right,
try to be that guy instead of being Jason Staub.
right,
And when you do that, that it's just unrealistic. Like I'm comparing myself to guys who are 6'5" and I'm a 5'11"
right.
right-handed pitcher. It's just not the same. We don't move the same. We're not the same type of athlete. So that's one of the things. And then understanding how to monitor workload
Yeah,
is big from an injury prevention standpoint. So I wish I mean I like to work at baseball. I'd practice it every day. I would throw every day. I wish sometimes maybe I took a day off.
right,
Or maybe I didn't go try to throw the ball as hard as I could every single day. Maybe I had some days where it was like a light throw day and then a heavy throw day on the next day.
right.
So a little bit better at listening to my body and understanding what I needed would have been nice.
How do you tell a 15-year-old kid, though? How do you tell them you need to take a couple of days or you need to take a day off every week or like how do you get them to hear that?
Well, one, I think telling a 15-year-old is tough to do anything with. There's a reason I coach college guys now, but
They
um,
are very emotional is what I've heard. Teenage boys are very emotional.
there's that, and there's also a little bit of that pride where
Mm,
you, I mean, I thought I knew better.
right, right.
So, there's that's tough. I think it comes down to building that relationship and being someone that they can trust and go to. I think
Hmm.
that's going to help them. Um, but for me, even with our guys, I don't really try to tell them anything. I want them to solve the problem on their own. And I might
Right,
ask questions that guide them to that answer that I want them to say.
right.
But if it's their idea at the end of the day, they're much more likely to listen to that than you
Sure,
just straight up telling them something.
sure. A little bit of psychology built in there.
A little bit.
Yeah,
I'm not a
yeah.
psychologist, but a little trick.
So let's talk about you have another position currently. You are the director of strength and conditioning and the pitching coach at PFA Baseball. Tell us a little bit about that organization and your position and how it came about.
Yeah, so it's from where I am now in Claremont, it's about 5 minutes down the street in Montclair, California.
Oh, that's
It
awesome.
was yeah, it was founded by Dave Coggin. He was a first round draft pick by the Philadelphia Phillies. He
Okay,
made it to the big leagues for a couple years with them. I believe he had the same injury I had.
right,
So his career ended pretty shortly after making it to the big leagues. Um, we kind of had a similar path where he was very interested on finding ways to help prevent injuries and help athletes reach their potential. So he traveled the country, went to some of the best baseball minds in the country, shadowed them, worked with them, and started his own facility where he coaches pitchers. And he's been doing it for about 16, 17 years now.
right.
Um, so my head coach actually said you should check out this facility. You should see what you can learn from this guy. So I went over there and watched him communicate with athletes, and there was just like a light bulb that clicked for me. I was like, wow, this is maybe the best coach I've seen just with how simple he communicates it to athletes.
Right.
And he can communicate all the way from 6, 7 year olds through
Oh my
10,
God.
yeah, 10-year major league vets though. Like he can talk to anyone and get them to kind of understand and see what he's doing with them.
That is a gift in itself.
Right.
That's a wide range.
So I knew I had to be around this guy,
Right.
and he appreciated my knowledge on the strength and conditioning side. They were just about to be between strength and conditioning coaches at the facility. I said I'd love to work there, and he hired me to work with the college and professional baseball players during the off season.
Right.
So I do the strength and conditioning programs for them. We have currently about 15 professional guys in there right now, a college guys are still in classes for
Right.
a week, and then they'll be back for Thanksgiving break before going back to school, before coming back in the winter break. So I'll see those guys pretty soon. And at times we've had 80 athletes in there in a 4 hour stretch, so it can get pretty packed. But I started expanding a little bit into more of the pitch design stuff that's going to help big leaguers get better or get
Right.
jobs, stuff that's going to help college guys get signed by professional teams. So just again, surrounding myself with good people at
Mhm.
PFA who are way smarter at that stuff than I am. And I've been helping out with some of the throwing coaching stuff, working with pro guys. Before hopping on this call, I just played catch with like three MLB guys right before this. But
Is
my
that
job's pretty cool over there.
is that intimidating?
Um, in the beginning it is, but then you
Yeah.
just talk to them and you realize that they're a lot of them are my age. So you realize that like we all graduated in 2014 from high school at the same time, and you have stuff that you can talk about that you relate based off
Sure.
of that. And
Sure.
it's again just building that relationship, understand it's a person. It's not
They put their pants on the same way as everybody else.
it's not
They're
this
they
like
just they
yeah,
just got more people looking at them on a regular basis. Yeah.
right. They don't want to be treated any different than just a
Right.
regular person either. So that's been really cool. I work with a bunch of really good guys as well as
Mhm.
baseball players, but as people, they're awesome. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do both jobs.
So, I believe you said that at PFA, you guys can also you don't just help people that are there locally, you can help people online as well. Tell us a little bit about the services that you guys offer there.
So we do offer remote training.
Okay.
When you sign up for that, it's on our website, pfabaseball.com. You go there. Dave Coggin, the guy who's the head of the facility, he will ask for a couple of things on the pitching side, a couple of videos from different angles.
Right.
I'll ask for a couple things on the strength and conditioning side, a couple exercises so I can get an idea of how you move as an athlete. Together, we'll communicate. We'll build out 4 week blocks of strength and conditioning paired with a throwing program.
Mhm.
And with a lot of athletes that we see, we go through different phases, but a lot of them have to remap, which is pretty much change a couple mechanical things.
Sure.
So that's kind of the early stage, which pairs really well with me on the strength and conditioning side because they're usually new to my program as well. So they're kind of learning new exercises and it pairs really well. Then you get to a strengthening phase for both the throwing side and then the strength and conditioning side. And then you get to a mound velocity. It's based off what the individual needs. If they need to work on velocity, if they need to work on command, diversifying their pitch types so they can be more successful at the college, professional, or high school level. We pretty much have those conversations with the guys
Mhm.
via FaceTime, Zoom, email, text, whatever. We're both pretty available to have those conversations with guys pretty frequently.
So I'll put a link to the website in the show notes as well and on the video screen if you're watching this on YouTube. Um, let's just kind of wrap up everything. I want to looking back at your career and what you've done up until now. What's one lesson that you've learned about injuries? And you've probably already said this periodically through, but what's one thing about injuries that you now teach your players?
So I don't know if I've said this, but I'm gonna try and make it a little different.
Okay.
They take time,
Mm,
right? And everyone nowadays wants that instant gratification of, well, I feel
yes.
good, so it should work, right? And that's not necessarily the case. There's ups and downs, and it's a process like everything else is in sports. And you need to be able to listen to your body and surround yourself with people who know what they're doing, have a really good plan for you, and people that you trust. And you, as the individual, you have to execute that plan. You can't deviate and do a bunch of different things. You have to stay with the process,
Right.
stay in the moment, and just take it day by day.
What's the hardest thing that you had to adjust to besides from playing baseball? Like, some of our guys have talked about, or some of our athletes have talked about, they had a hard time figuring out their own exercise regimen, or they had a hard time, being not not being in the sport or not being in the game. What's one thing that's really was difficult for you after leaving the game?
So I'll give a couple. One
Okay.
is finding something I could be competitive in.
Mm,
So I golf with friends when I can. I'll
right.
play pickleball here in California. Um, I'll do whatever. Pretty much if someone wants to play a game, ping pong, something like that, I'll play just to try to stay competitive and taking an answer someone else has said, even as a strength and conditioning coach, I have the hardest time programming for myself.
Yeah.
So I write the workouts for a couple different teams here and I'll just steal their workout and do it for the day.
But that's funny, but it does kind of make sense, and I've had a lot of the athletes that have talked about they had no, because they had had a plan and goals in mind written for them for so long that the freedom to do whatever, they just didn't know what to do.
It's daunting. There's so many things you can do.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, well, what's the point of me doing this? Just because
Yes.
you have no goal necessarily. And when I finished playing, I wanted to lose a little bit of weight. I wanted to drop 10 to 15 pounds. And I still want to do that today. So I need to work on something like that right now. But um if you have those goals and you again just take it day by day, stick to the process, trust it, it's usually pays off.
Are there any, what do you call them, superstitions or things that root, like, not superstitions, but things that you did on a repetitive basis? I can't think of the terminology for it, that you still do, that you just can't get out of the habit of doing.
Like a routine or something,
Yes,
or
routine, or not superstitions, but I can't think of the word for it. I'm definitely going to edit this part out. Um, Not ritual, maybe it is a ritual, just something that you were so used to doing maybe on game days that you still kind of do now or something.
yeah. So I used to shave the days I played. Last year I didn't shave at all during our college season. I just thought, hey, I'll try it out, and it ended up working. So I might have to find something new this year, but I used to clean my cleats the night before a game.
Yeah.
So now before our games here, I'll clean my turfs or my shoes that I'm wearing the night before.
Okay.
And before I go to bed, I'll have my uniform and everything like packed up, ready to go, and in the same exact order, just like I did in college. Um, I mean, here on certain days I'll get the same breakfast on Fridays. On
Yeah.
Saturdays I'll
Yeah.
get a different breakfast, and just I try to stay to the same thing week after week, day after day.
Right. No, no, I get that. I had one, a lot of the athletes have talked about little bitty things that they still do that they just can't get out. It gives them comfort, it gives them structure. It kind of keeps that process going, so to speak. So let's talk about this. Um, and we're going to finish it up. So, what would, if you could go back and talk to your 9-year-old self, 9-year-old Jason, what would you tell him?
I would tell him to be patient.
That's a good
I
one.
I I still struggle with this today, but back then I just wanted to go, go, go. I didn't think about future ramifications of anything. If I could just say like slow the moment down, just enjoy what you're doing right now. And just take it all in because it doesn't last forever. Or athletics doesn't last forever. So really enjoy those moments, enjoy the people that you're with, and just be patient.
It doesn't. And one injury can end your career
Right.
at any age. The other thing is, I see kids that are in such a hurry to get to college and in such a hurry to play pro. and they don't seem to want to enjoy being a high school student. Because let me tell you, when the bills come, the household things come, the marriage comes, the kids come, you're going to miss those days. And I wish that kids would take more of a moment to take into what they're doing at the
Yeah,
time.
and I think the same thing happened to me a little bit where
Mm.
I won we won a state championship in high school my senior year, and I was excited. That was the first time we did that in 20 something years, but I was like, well, what's next? Next year I need to win a national championship at Eastern
Yeah,
Connecticut. And yes, I celebrated for maybe a day, but I never really looked back on it and enjoyed it in the moment because I was
sure.
looking forward to the next thing.
Sure. Where can everybody learn about Pomona? Pomona? Pomona
Pomona.
Pitzer. Pomona Pitzer Base. I've done really good up until now. Where can everyone learn more about Pomona Pitzer baseball?
So they can go to sagehens.com.
And I'll
That's
definitely put that on the show notes.
that's our mascot. A sage hen is it's a sage grouse. It kind of looks like a turkey. It's
Okay.
like a mountain bird. I've
Okay.
never seen one in person.
Okay. And when does your season start?
We start practicing on January 14th, and our
Okay.
first game is February 7th.
Okay. You guys have great weather out there in California.
We never miss a day outside. It's no snow or anything here.
Do you miss the snow?
Not at all. I'm a baseball guy. I like baseball all year round.
Okay, so that's all we have for today. That wraps up today's show. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It was a fun time.
Thank you all for listening, especially if you've made it all the way to this part of the show. I appreciate all your support. Another reminder to subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. My mantra is like, share, and review. Follow us on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week. Hey everyone, a quick scheduling update. The fifth quarter podcast is moving from a weekly show to an every other week schedule. Thank you so much for your support. I'm excited to keep sharing these amazing journeys with you.